Mason Holt wasn't exactly known for wise decisions. The mining colony of Vesta 9 knew him as the fool who'd bet his last credits on cursed relics and bad poker hands. So, when he stumbled drunk into the sealed-off section of the excavation site, nobody was surprised, except that he came out alive. The chamber was older than any human settlement on this rock. No one knew who carved it or how deep the roots of the structure went. Some claimed it predated the colony by 1,000 years. Others whispered it was older than human civilization itself. But nobody really cared until Mason, reeking of cheap synthale and reckless curiosity, found the statue at its heart. She was carved from obsidian so polished, she reflected even the dim glow of his wrist torch. Her features were impossibly alien, yet hauntingly beautiful. Sharp, angular cheeks, an elegant crown fused to her brow, and eyes shut in an expression of timeless serenity. Around her feet, runes pulsed faintly when his clumsy boots scraped the ancient floor. Maybe it was the ale. Maybe it was the loneliness that gnawed at every miner out here between paydays. Or maybe Mason Holt was just born stupid. He stood on tiptoe, grinning at the dusty statue towering over him, and laughed into the echoing dark. "Well, Your Highness, here's a royal kiss for luck." He pressed his cracked lips to the cold stone. At first, nothing happened, except the pulse in his head, the sudden itch on his skin, and the subtle sense that the stale air grew too thick to breathe. He stumbled back, muttering curses as faint lines of molten gold snaked across the statue's surface. The chamber walls shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. An energy older than Earth's sun seeped out of the stone prison Mason had just awakened. A voice, not heard with ears, but felt like a burning thought behind his eyes, filled him with a terror he hadn't known since childhood. At last, the statue's eyelids cracked open. Beneath them, twin vortexes of violet fire, both beautiful and infinitely wrong. Who dares awaken Cathari of the Veyron throne? Mason fell to his knees. He couldn't scream. He couldn't think. He could only stare as a goddess trapped for 1,000 years flexed her will for the first time since her betrayal. Somewhere outside the chamber, alarms blared through Vesta 9. Miners and corporate guards scrambled to respond, but none would reach him in time. He had joked about kissing a queen. Now he knelt before an Empress who remembered a universe that had forgotten her. And with a voice like molten glass, she whispered her verdict, "Human fool, you have doomed your species." Mason didn't remember much after those words scorched his mind. A swirl of violet light, a pain so deep it carved runes of agony into his bones. And then, silence. He awoke on the cold metal floor of the mining outpost's infirmary. Blinding lights stabbed at his eyes. Figures hovered above him, medics, corporate security, and looming behind them all, Director Miles, the man who practically owned Mason's soul through debt and contract. "You idiot!" Miles's voice dripped with contempt. "What did you do in there? Why are the seismometers spiking like we drilled into a reactor core?" Mason opened his mouth to speak, but the words tangled in his throat. He saw it all again. The stone queen's eyes, the runes alive beneath her feet, the promise of doom whispered in a voice no human mind should hear. Before he could answer, the lights flickered. Every screen in the room glitched into static, then into symbols no Terran linguist would ever decode. Machines hissed. An unnatural hum vibrated through the walls, making the air itself seem alive with warning. One of the security officers gripped his gun tighter. "Sir, whatever he woke up, it's coming out. All of it." Miles cursed under his breath. He grabbed Mason by the collar, yanking him off the bed like a rag doll. "Listen to me, you worthless piece of debris. If you brought some bioweapon up here—" He didn't finish. A tremor rattled the outpost, tossing medics and equipment like toys. Outside the reinforced windows, they saw it, a shimmer of violet lightning dancing along the surface of the excavation shaft. From deep below, a howl rose, not of wind, but of something half forgotten by the stars themselves. Mason's voice finally returned. "She's awake. Cathari, she said humanity is doomed." Miles's eyes widened. "What the hell is a Cathari? Some alien AI? A ghost?" Mason shook his head, though the answer clawed at the back of his mind. He remembered fragments, not his own memories, but echoes. Thrones of living stone drifting through nebulae, armadas that scorched planets to glass, betrayal, chains, endless sleep. Before he could explain, alarms wailed throughout the base. Automated turrets swung toward the main shaft, then fell silent as every circuit fried in a single, blinding surge of violet power. Miles barked orders no one would obey. Fear thickened the recycled air. Mason felt something in his skull twitch, like an antenna receiving a frequency older than human DNA. He realized, with sickening clarity, that whatever Kithari was, he wasn't free of her. She was inside him now, watching, whispering, waiting. "Director," Mason croaked, "we have to evacuate. She's not staying down there." Miles stared into his eyes. For a moment, all corporate bravado vanished. He saw the truth in Mason's trembling face, a miner too dumb to lie about a thing so big. Outside, the mining colony's perimeter lights died, one by one, until only the violet glow of awakening ruin painted the walls in ghostly flame. The evacuation klaxons drowned out thought, but not fear. Miners in dirty exosuits stumbled over each other toward the landing pads, dragging oxygen tanks, children, the few keepsakes they could carry. Mason stumbled alongside them at first, driven by instinct alone. But every step away from the mine felt like someone was ripping fishhooks from his brain. The presence, Kethari, tugged at him from below, demanding he come back, come closer, see everything she had kept locked in the dark. He barely noticed when a squad of corporate Marines grabbed him, slammed him to his knees beside Director Miles near the last heavy transport. "You're not going anywhere, miner," snarled Miles. He shoved a pulse pistol in Mason's face, finger trembling on the trigger. "You woke it up, you shut it down, or I'll paint the deck with your worthless skull." Mason wanted to scream, "I can't," but the words wouldn't come. Instead, his eyes drifted over Miles's shoulder. There, where the mine shaft split the moon's crust, a glow pulsed like a heartbeat made of dying stars. The rock cracked open, fissures splitting the ground in geometric patterns, glyphs in an alien tongue no human was ever meant to read. One of the Marines backed away, muttering prayers. Another pissed himself when the air turned heavy with static and the taste of iron filled every mouth. Then, impossibly, they heard her. Not through ears, through bone, marrow, synapse. "Where is your empire now? Your fleet? Your false dominion?" Mason felt her speak through him. His lips moved without permission. "Broken chains. No prison. You die last, my waking gift." Miles struck him so hard, blood sprayed the deck plates. "Shut up! Shut up!" But it was too late. Kithari's laughter rolled across the moon like a chorus of gods. Deep below, the ancient machinery hidden beneath centuries of ice and ore finally responded to her will. Vast stone doors, mistaken for bedrock by human scanners, split apart. Within, millions of tendrils of something halfway between metal and muscle writhed free. A heart of living stone, once a queen, once a weapon, now awake after 1,000 years of silence. The ground buckled. Geysers of gas and molten metal shot skyward. Escape ships tried to lift off but slammed back down when gravity twisted itself into knots. Mason found his voice, or maybe it was hers. "She was a prison, not a relic. You drilled open hell, and now—" His eyes turned violet, swirling with fractal symbols. The Marines screamed and dropped him. Miles stumbled backward, pistol forgotten. Mason rose. His voice was not his own anymore. "Now, the galaxy remembers who its true rulers were. And you, tiny predator ape, you shall carry my message to your species." Violet lightning danced around him. The wind howled in a language made of ancient wrath. Kithari was free. The doom was no longer a promise. It was a prophecy set in motion by a miner's foolish dare. And Earth, bloated with its illusion of dominance, had no idea its worst nightmare wore human skin and an alien queen's crown. Mason's scream split the sky, except it wasn't his voice alone anymore. It vibrated the moon's crust, rattled bones in fleeing humans, and made even orbiting ships shudder as if they'd heard a ghost pounding on their hulls. Director Miles ran. His Marines dropped their weapons and scattered like insects when the floodlights cut out, one by one, leaving only the glow pouring from the open mine shaft. Down there, in the core where miners once chiseled stone for corporate profit, Cathari's true form uncoiled. Vast and fluid, shifting from statue to living goddess to coiling shadows all at once, she dragged herself up the shaft like an ancient serpent, learning how to breathe again. Mason stumbled to the edge and looked down. He should have been horrified. Instead, he felt pride, awe, as if watching a mother rise from her grave to reclaim a stolen throne. Cathari's voice pressed on his mind like an ocean pressing on a drowning man. "Do you fear me now, child?" "No," he whispered. "I feared you as a secret. I fear what you'll do to the rest of them." A cold chuckle filled his skull. "Then watch." The ground ruptured as she broke the surface. Massive tendrils of obsidian and glistening metal spread across the mining colony. Towers crumbled like toy blocks. Cathari's core heart, a sphere of interlocking crystal and ancient circuitry, hovered above the shaft, pulsing with a heartbeat that shook the atmosphere. A fleeing dropship tried to launch. With a flick of her will, its reactor stuttered and froze mid-air. Gravity turned traitor. The dropship crumpled like foil and fell back to the ground in a muted explosion of fire and steam. Mason's knees hit the dirt. He laughed, mad, wild, helpless laughter. "You said you'd spare me," he gasped. "You freed me. You wear my mark now. You're no longer just Mason. You are my herald." He felt her burrow deeper into his mind, rewriting things. Memories reshaped themselves like molten glass. He saw images he didn't understand, starships built from living flesh, worlds remade in her image, the ancient war that caged her here. Far above, orbiting frigates armed with planetary bombs spun in panic. Orders crackled over encrypted comms, glass the moon, wipe the infection. But Cathari was already there, whispering into their cores, jamming their weapons, turning human computers into mindless extensions of her thoughts. All the while, the mining moon convulsed. Lava veins split the ground in glowing spiderwebs. Gravity fluxes tossed boulders into the thin atmosphere like meteorites in reverse. Amid the chaos, Mason stood, half man, half prophet, eyes blazing with symbols no human had spoken aloud in 10 millennia. He could taste Cathari's hunger, not for flesh but for dominion. She had waited 1,000 years for someone reckless enough to break her seal with a fool's kiss. Now she would teach humanity the cost of mistaking prison for myth. And Earth? Earth would kneel, or burn. The mining moon was no longer a place of human industry. It was a living monument to Cathari's rebirth. What was once a barren, profit-drilled rock now seethed with dark veins of biometallic growth, towering spires that hummed with alien resonance. Orbiting warships flickered in and out of control, their captains screaming into dead channels, while their reactors sang Cathari's name in a frequency only machines could hear. Mason stood at the heart of it all, at the mouth of the main shaft, his boots sinking into the writhing new flesh of the moon's surface. Around him, armored Marines, the last survivors of the corporate strike team, knelt in a semicircle. Not because they worshipped him, but because their weapons refused to fire, and their minds bent under the weight of the goddess coiled inside his skull. He could feel Cathari's vast mind shimmering like a galaxy within him, demanding more. More control, more worlds, more humans to kneel or be devoured. And somewhere under that cosmic thunder, Mason, the mechanic, the joker, who kissed a statue on a dare, felt himself splitting apart. He spoke, though it hurt. "Leave them alone. You have me. You have this moon. Let them flee." Her laughter broke a mountain in half. "Child, I do not negotiate with insects. I harvest them. You were my gate. Nothing more." Mason clutched at his skull, blood leaking from his nose and ears as her influence bored deeper. He saw flashes of Earth, blue oceans, crowded cities. his little sister's graduation photo on his battered datapad, all flickering like fragile candles, ready to snuff out under Cathari's vast shadow. He fell to his knees beside the company flag, now half buried under her writhing tendrils. A Marine crawled to him, helmet off, eyes wet with terror. "Sir, Mason, what do we do?" Mason stared at him, at these soldiers, these greedy miners, the scared corporate scientists cowering in the landing bays, all guilty of waking a monster, same as him, but all still human. Deep inside, he found a spark the goddess hadn't devoured yet. Stubborn, stupid, human. He whispered to the Marine, "Run!" Then he touched the tendril nearest him and pushed back. It felt like setting fire to his own veins. Cathari howled, not in pain, but in confusion. No host had ever fought her once she nested. "You needed a herald to be free," Mason gasped, voice echoing with her stolen power. "But you made one mistake." His hands plunged into the ground, into her new flesh. He poured every memory she'd shown him, the coordinates of her secret weaknesses, the symbols of her ancient enemies, directly into the moon's core. Above, the orbiting ships saw a blinding signal, a pulse carrying a kill sequence older than human civilization. The anti-contamination fail-safes buried deep in her prison code flickered alive. Cathari roared inside him, splitting his mind wide open, but he forced one final thought through the storm. Better to die a fool than live as your slave. A searing light cracked the moon's surface like an egg. The soldiers scrambled for dropships. The mining rigs collapsed into molten rivers. And at the heart of the apocalypse, Mason smiled through tears as Cathari screamed her last threat into a void that no longer obeyed her, Mason stood frozen, heart hammering in his chest, as the ancient alien statue's eyes flickered to life with a glow that seemed to pierce through time itself. The cold stone surface began to shimmer and ripple, revealing the form of Cathari, the last living memory of a civilization that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires across countless galaxies. "You doomed your species," her voice echoed, heavy with sorrow and undeniable truth. The words landed like a thunderbolt, shaking Mason to his core. It wasn't just a judgment, it was a prophecy, a warning carved into the fabric of the universe by one who had endured the consequences of such hubris. For millennia, Cathari had been bound in silence, a statue trapped by rituals meant to protect the cosmos from civilizations that might unleash chaos and destruction. Her awakening was no accident. Mason's foolish joke had cracked the seal, and with it, the responsibility to heed the message fell squarely on his shoulders. "Why me?" Mason whispered, swallowing his fear. "Why did you wake because of me?" Cathari's gaze softened, not in compassion, but with the weight of eons. "Because, despite your people's failings, you carry a spark of hope. You were chosen by fate, or perhaps by the cosmos itself, to be the bearer of this final warning." She extended her hand, the glow intensifying. As Mason reached out, a flood of visions overwhelmed him. Worlds consumed by war, species extinguished by their own greed, civilizations collapsing under the weight of their arrogance. He saw the consequences of humanity's relentless thirst for power, the wars, the ecological destruction, the fractures tearing their society apart. But amid the despair, there were glimpses of resilience, humans standing together, reaching for peace, creating wonders from technology, embracing cooperation with alien species. It was fragile but real. "You must carry this knowledge back," Cathari said, her voice resolute. "Your people stand at a crossroads. They can either continue down the path of destruction or rise above it. The choice is theirs and yours." Mason's mind raced. How could he convince a war-hungry world to listen to an ancient alien's warnings? How could he carry this burden alone? "Not alone," Cathari replied before he could speak. "You are not the first to hear this message, and you will not be the last. There are others, scattered among your stars, who remember the old ways, who understand the cost of war. Find them, unite them. Only then can your species survive." The temple trembled as the seals that held Cathari's essence shattered completely. Light poured forth, illuminating the forgotten histories of countless civilizations that had risen and fallen before humans ever dreamed of space travel. Mason felt a surge of strength and purpose. The man who had once been a simple mechanic, mocking a statue as a joke, was now a messenger of salvation. His mission was clear: to awaken humanity not with fear but with hope. As he stepped out of the ancient chamber, the stars above shone brighter, as if acknowledging the fragile new beginning. The galaxy was watching, waiting. The fate of humanity rested on a razor's edge, but for the first time in centuries, the thread of hope was alive. And Mason, chosen by fate and bound by responsibility, would be the one to carry it forward.